Welcome back to Case Closed on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're diving deep into a case that really shook a community that was, well, designed to be like the happiest place.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Celebration, Florida.
Yeah.
It's the town Disney built.
Right.
But beneath the surface of that perfect picture,
Right.
a terrible tragedy was unfolding.
Yeah.
The story of Anthony Todt and the murders of his wife and 3 children.
It's a case that really makes you wonder how well you can ever truly know anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, here's this family. They're living what looks like the American dream. Beautiful home, successful career, adorable kids,
Yeah.
and yet, like, darkness underneath.
Yeah, and that's what's so disturbing about this whole case.
Yeah.
We're going to try and unpack what led up to that awful discovery
Yeah.
in January 2020. And maybe, just maybe, we can get a glimpse into what could drive a seemingly ordinary man to do something so unthinkable.
Absolutely.
So to start, tell us about the Totes themselves.
Okay, so Anthony was a physical therapist working in both Florida and Connecticut. He even coached youth soccer.
Wow.
Megan homeschooled their 3 kids,
Right.
Alec, Tyler, and Zoe, the youngest. They had a dog, Breezy. From the outside, it looked like an ideal life.
Yeah, picture perfect.
Yeah.
But like you said, cracks in that perfect picture. Turns out, Anthony was running a pretty big insurance fraud scheme. Billing for treatments patients never even got. This wasn't just like a small thing. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars
Oh, wow.
in fraudulent claims.
Yeah, and that financial pressure it was building, he had taken out high-interest loans, was facing foreclosure. An eviction notice was literally slapped on their front door. It seems like the guy was drowning in debt, but trying to keep up this front,
It's like a double life.
Absolutely a double life.
So what happens when it all starts to fall apart? Does he come clean to Megan? Try to fix things?
Not exactly. Around Christmas 2019, Anthony tells Megan's family they're going on a trip, going off the grid. Seems like a plausible excuse, right? Especially during the holidays. Yeah.
But then weeks go by, no contact. Not even on Christmas Day.
Hmm.
Which, knowing how much Megan loved Christmas, that was a big red flag for her family.
Yeah, I can see why.
Yeah.
So the family starts to get really worried, especially after that eviction notice shows up. Anyone hear from Megan at all during this time?
Well, one neighbor actually texted Megan and got a strange, short reply. Totally out of character for her.
Oh, wow.
So the family's concern grows, and they end up contacting the authorities and beg for a wellness check on the Totes. And since the FBI was already looking into Anthony because of the fraud investigation,
Right.
things escalated pretty quickly.
So January 13th, 2020, federal agents and local deputies show up at the Todt house,
Yeah.
ready to confront Anthony about the fraud.
Right.
And that's when they make this truly horrifying discovery.
Right.
Anthony answers the door, acting nervous, agitated,
Yeah.
claims Megan is asleep, the kids are at a sleepover.
Right.
But the officers don't believe him.
No.
They go into the house,
Yeah.
hit with this overwhelming foul odor. Yeah.
They follow their noses upstairs to the master bedroom.
Oh, my God.
What they find is a scene straight out of a nightmare.
Oh, God.
The decomposing bodies of Megan, Alec, Tyler, Zoe, and even their dog, Breezy.
Awful.
They had been dead for weeks,
Oh, my gosh.
and Anthony had been living in that house with their bodies this whole time.
Oh, that's just awful.
It's just...
Really bad. So it's this chilling discovery. And what makes it even worse is Anthony's explanation.
Okay.
He claims it was a suicide pact,
Right.
that Megan had become obsessed with reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
Yeah, and the idea that the world was ending, like an apocalypse.
Hold on. So he's saying his wife, who homeschooled their kids and loved Christmas,
Right.
suddenly decided the world was ending.
Yeah,
And the only way out was a family suicide pact.
right.
I don't know. Something doesn't add up here.
Yeah, and to back up his story, Anthony gives them what he says is a suicide note written by Megan.
Okay.
It talks about her health problems.
Right.
Their fear of Anthony's father and this desire to be together forever in the afterlife.
So he's got this suicide note, case closed, right?
Not quite.
Oh, really?
The investigators aren't buying it. Anthony's story keeps changing.
Okay.
First, he claims Megan poisoned the kids and then stabbed herself, begging him to help end her suffering.
Oh, wow.
So he suffocated her.
Okay.
Then he tries to put all the blame on Megan, saying she killed the kids and he had nothing to do with it.
It's like he's throwing stuff at the wall, hoping something will stick.
Ah.
But this isn't just some made-up story.
Right.
This is the murder of his wife and 3 children.
Yeah.
You'd think he would have a consistent story,
Yeah.
especially if he was innocent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the inconsistencies in his story are just the beginning. Remember we talked about Anthony's father?
Yeah.
Turns out Anthony's childhood was far from that picture-perfect life he was trying to show everyone.
Oh, this is where it gets interesting. Tell me more.
When Anthony was only 4 years old, someone broke into his family home and shot his mother.
What?
And guess what?
What?
His own father, Robert, was convicted of hiring someone to carry out the attack.
Wait, so he not only saw this horrible act of violence as a kid,
Right.
but his own dad was behind it. You have to wonder what kind of psychological impact that would have.
Absolutely. And while we can't use this to excuse what he did, it does make you think about the role of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And how it might shape someone's capacity for such violence.
It's like a real-life Greek tragedy, a cycle of violence across generations.
Yeah,
But even with that troubled past, Anthony still had to face the music.
absolutely. The trial took place in April 2022. And despite his constantly changing story and attempts to blame Megan, the prosecution had a lot of evidence against him.
Okay.
The alleged suicide note, the forensic reports, witness testimonies, and of course his own conflicting confessions.
Right.
It all pointed to Anthony as the one who did it.
Did he plead guilty, or did he still say he was innocent?
Surprisingly, he pleaded not guilty. His defense team tried to argue that the state of decomposition of the bodies made it impossible to know the exact cause of death, and that there wasn't enough solid evidence directly linking Anthony to the murders.
Okay.
They even tried to paint Megan as mentally unstable, someone who could harm her children and herself.
So he's sticking with blame the victim, even in court. Did the jury believe it?
Not at all. After 6 days of trial and only 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Anthony Todt guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder
Wow.
and 1 count of animal cruelty for the death of their dog, Breezy.
Wow. Justice was served. But it's hard to imagine any verdict really giving closure in a case like this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking.
It is.
4 lives taken and a community left to deal with the aftermath of this unimaginable horror.
Right.
Anthony Todt was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without parole.
Wow.
Life behind bars for a man who at one point seemed to have it all.
Yeah, and it's a sentence that really shows how serious his crimes were. Yeah.
But even with a guilty verdict,
Yeah.
there are still so many questions.
Like what?
Like, what really drove Anthony to do this?
Right.
Was it the money problems, the weight of all the lies, or could it be, like his defense team said, that the trauma from his past had something to do with it?
It's like we're looking at 2 different versions of the same guy.
Right.
The loving husband and father, involved in his community, coaching soccer,
Yeah.
and then this other Anthony Todt, the one who could commit cold-blooded murder and live with the bodies of his family for weeks. How can those 2 things exist in the same person?
That's the truly unsettling thing about this case.
Yeah.
We may never know what was going on in his head,
Right.
what made him snap. The fact that he kept saying he was innocent,
Yeah.
even with all the evidence against him,
Right.
suggests he was really detached from reality.
It makes you wonder if he actually believed his own lies.
Yeah.
If he'd somehow convinced himself that he was the victim.
It's possible. But the real victims here are Megan, Alec, Tyler, and Zoe.
Right.
And their dog, Breezy.
Of course.
Their lives were stolen.
Yeah,
Their futures erased by the husband and father who should have protected them.
absolutely.
This deep dive into the Anthony Todt case has taken us to some dark places.
Yeah, it has.
We've looked at his past, the lies he told, and the awful consequences of his actions.
Yeah, and we've seen how appearances can be deceiving, how darkness can hide beneath the surface of what seems like a perfect life.
It's a reminder that we never really know what's going on with other people.
That's true.
This case makes us face some uncomfortable truths about human nature.
Yeah.
The fact that life is fragile
Yeah,
and the damage that secrets can do.
absolutely.
But maybe the most important thing to take away from this is the importance of paying attention
To what?
to the people around us,
Mhm.
noticing when someone is struggling,
Yeah.
offering support,
Right.
and remembering that even in perfect-looking communities like Celebration, bad things can happen. That's very true.
Well, everyone, that's our deep dive into the tragic case of the Todt family.
Yeah.
We've looked at the evidence, the theories,
Right.
and the questions that remain about this horrific crime. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, let us know.
And if you found this deep dive interesting, be sure to subscribe to Case Closed for more stories and analysis.
We'll keep exploring the dark side of human nature and the mysteries behind some of the most confusing crimes in history.
Stay curious, but stay safe out there. We'll see you in the next deep dive.